Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. I think we lost Steve, so we'll give him a second to reconnect.
Can you hear me now, Tom?
Yes, we can.
My apologies. As soon as I clicked the start go live, the thing crashed on me. So apologies for that, everyone. Not a great start, but we'll improve from here on out, I hope. So welcome everyone to the first webinar actually of 2022. So a belated Happy New Year to everyone. And this is our first major release of the year. And today we will be giving you a release review of version 2.3. And the major feature release in this version is a product called InterACT, which is our remote shell solution. Before I get into that, let me introduce the people on the call. So we have Tom, who's the product manager for Air. And we're also joined by Erhan, who's the product specialist for Air as well. So we have the full Air product management team. And we also have Emre on the call as usual, who is joining us to add his expertise later on in the webinar. A little bit of housekeeping as usual. So please use the right-hand side panel to submit your questions. Don't be shy. Please, any questions you have, please put them in there. We will deal with them at the end of the webinar. I've also put a link to our Discord server into the chat panel. So please come and join us there if you have specific technical discussion or you want to access support in that way. We'd love to see you over there. And also for existing users of Binalyze products, as usual, support can be accessed in three primary ways. So binalyze.com/support on the website, or by email at support@binalyze.com, or on our knowledge base at kb.binalyze.com, which is getting more and more comprehensive every day. So let's get into this release. So as I said at the top, we're adding a major new module to Binalyze Air, which is called InterACT. And InterACT, the goal of InterACT is to start us on the path of extending the world-class power of Air for investigations, which I think is fairly undisputed, into the realm of containment and remediation, and to do that at enterprise scale. So as we said, it's a remote shell product, but it's not just another shell. We're aware there are many, many shell products on the market, but InterACT is a little bit different. So 4 primary ways, which we're going to show you today as part of the demonstration. So because it leverages the infrastructure and architecture of Air, it's lightning fast to deploy and also to manage your assets. It's permission-based, so you can maintain the security of your network by giving specific roles and responsibilities to individual users, as opposed to just opening up shell access and everybody has the same permissions and access. It's also uniquely cross-platform, so it works across Linux and also Windows, and we will be also announcing Mac support at the beginning of the next quarter. And it has a libraries feature so that you can store all of your favorite scripts in the library to access them quickly when you're performing an investigation. And also, again, by leveraging the Air platform, every command is logged and fully auditable, so you have complete visibility of what's happening during your InterACT sessions. So we've split the demonstration as usual up into 4 parts this time. And the first part of the demonstration, Tom and Erhan are going to take you through the activation of InterACT, how to control the permissions and roles, and also how to look at the auditing and the logging. So with that, I'll hand over to Tom, and he'll take you through that first section.
Thank you, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, InterACT is quite, when developing this, we were quite sensitive to security and permissions perspective. That's why InterACT comes switched off by default. So you need to opt in order to use it. So first thing you should do is go to settings in the top right corner, into the settings, and under agent, you have the InterACT setting, which, as I said, is switched off by default. Now, in order to enable this, you must first set up the SSL permissions, the SSL certificate, and 2-factor authentication. under authentication. So once those two are set up, you are able to switch this on, save the settings, and we're good to go. Now, the other part of the permissions and privileges around InterACT is based on our users and roles. So we've introduced new privileges when creating a role. I can search here. So first of all, maybe as a general mention to those of you who are not familiar with this part of AIR, so we have quite a granular spec of privileges that can be set throughout the system. So the list here is very long on what you can allow or not allow specific users or group of users to do. 102 different privileges to be specific. So there is a search capability here. And those are the privileges for InterACT. So Steve mentioned the library. We have permissions to view and modify the library. And the permissions for the shell are as follows. So the most basic permission is Enumerate, and that only allows users to view the files and the structure processes and things like that that are on the endpoints, but not the content of any files or anything like that. To view the content of files or to collect files from an endpoint, you must have the read content privilege. And in order to put files on the system or deploy files to the endpoint and run scripts or native commands on the endpoint, run applications, install anything, you need the write and execute permission. So those permissions are dependent. If I switch on Enumerate, I only have Enumerate, but if I switch on write and execute, I get all of them, and obviously with the read content as well. Right. Last part that we wanted to mention is in this part of the demo is the auditing. Every command sent through the InterACT shell is completely audited, and it's audited in two places. So the first is the InterACT report, so the report for the session, and we will see that a little bit later. The second place is the audit log. So if we go to the audit log here, I can see the entire InterACT, sorry, the entire audit log for this system. Let's go a little bit back to when I used InterACT. Here. So that's how it looks. So there is a command sent to this endpoint on InterACT, and I see exactly who sent the command and what is exactly the command, the syntax of the command that was sent. So this will be just the command itself without the response from the endpoint, because the response can be sensitive evidence. And also because the entire audit log is sent to Syslog, and we don't want to overload the Syslog. So that's just the documentation of the commands that were sent. The report itself has more information, and we'll see that a little bit later. Steve, back to you.
Thanks, Tom. So that sets the scene for us a little bit in terms of how we activate InterACT and also how we set our teams up to use it. So before we move on to the next part of the demonstration, which is where we'll actually we will show some of the use cases for InterACT, just a few more points about the solution and the product itself. So InterACT is launching as a standard feature within AIR. So hopefully that delivers even greater return on investment for our existing customers. We intend to keep it that way for the time being. Let's see how the product develops, but at the moment it is included as standard. As Tom said, it's an opt-in product by design. We want it to be a considered choice from a security perspective for all of our customers to choose to switch it on. And it does require some of that additional configuration regarding SSL certificates and the like. Granular roles, so actually up to over 100 now, granular roles. That was the last webinar, it was 85. So you can see we're making rapid progress in all areas. But it allows you to create that permission system so that everyone in your team can do as much and no more that they should be allowed to do. And that is extended fully to InterACT as a remote shell, which is one of our USPs. One thing we haven't spoken about is that Aries through the organizations feature is a multi-tenant solution. So that adds an additional layer of control on who can access what. If you are a large enterprise, you could create individual organizations for your country offices or your different business units. Or if you're an MSSP, then obviously you could use the organizations feature to control who can access which of your clients from a single instance of Air. And the comprehensive auditing that Tom has shown you a little bit of there, there's quite a bit more which we'll get into now, allows for that full visibility across the system. And everything that's done via remote shell is logged actually in a number of places, which we'll get into now. So let's do the first demonstration. And the premise here is that the SOC team have received an alert from the antivirus about an interesting setup.exe file. And we're going to dive in now and investigate that and see what we can find out. So let's hand back to Tom. Let's show you around.
Thank you, Steve. All right, so to be more specific, we got an alert about a specific endpoint, this desktop demo 04, and we've got an alert about that setup.exe file in the Windows temp folder. So we are going to go into the endpoint details page and start an InterACT shell with this endpoint. I'll just select a case where I want to place this that interaction belongs to this case. I can set certain options either manually or via policies. And we can talk a little bit more about those interactions, those options that we have here a little bit later, but I think that's quite self-explanatory. But I'll mention that in the next scenario. For now, I just want to start the InterACT shell, and that's what it looks like. So now I have established connection. I can see the system resources over here on the right, and this is my shell. So first thing I want to do before we start sending commands is just send the help command to get the list of commands that are currently implemented in InterACT. That list will continue to grow as we develop InterACT, and we'll add more commands. But as it stands today, it is powerful enough for you to be able to do basically anything you want on the remote endpoints, because anything we would add down the line for you to be able to do directly as a native command, you could do with the exec command by executing a command on a native shell on the endpoint. And those would run with system privileges. So yeah, so that's the list of commands that you have out of the box. And we will add more to that. Okay. So first thing we want to do is go to that C Windows temp folder. And now we want to find the file that the antivirus alerted us to. So I'm looking for a file. So the type is file, and the name of the file is setup.exe. So that file is found under a folder called megasearch and under an installer folder. If I do, well, there'll be too many things here, but let's just go to that folder, megasearch installer. And let's run the dir command here just so we see what's in this folder. So indeed, we have the setup exec here, but we also have a txt file, which we can read with the cat command, debug.txt. And we can see the red team left us a note here in this file. All right. So let's continue. Let's see what we have in this file. So what I want to do is I want to hash this file. So let's hash the setup.exe file. Sorry, setup.exe. And I'm getting 3 hashes for this file. And what I would want to do now is take one of these hashes, don't really matter what, just copy it from here. Let's open a new tab and go to virus total and search for this hash. Now I got no results for it, so that's quite alarming on its own. So that might be a new file or something that's haven't been previously identified. So I go back to my shell now, and I want to continue to investigate this file. So what I want to do now is collect this file, and in order to do that, I will zip it first, and I'll add a password to it. So it's encrypted with AES-256 encryption. I'll just give it a password and the name of the file. So setup.exe. Now that file is zipped, we can look at it again here. And last thing I want to do is collect this file. So I'll use the get command and to collect the setup.zip file. Now that file is now downloaded directly to my workstation, and I can send it on to malware analysis to see what's going on with this. Last word on this scenario before I hand it back to Steve. I've mentioned before in the options, you may have noticed, I'll highlight it again in a minute, but in the options, you've seen I have the option to choose between download and evidence repository. So in this case, I've chosen download, and that's why the file was collected directly to my laptop. But if I would have chosen evidence repository, the get command would have sent the file directly to the evidence repository and not to my laptop. As part of commands that we're going to add moving forward, we will add some capabilities to send files, as an example, to send files directly to third-party tools like Sendbox or anything like that. So that's something that will come down the line. All right, so our file is now sent to malware analysis, and back to you, Steve.
Thanks, Tom. Great stuff. Hopefully you all enjoyed that simple demonstration of how we can start to perform an investigation using InterACT. As I said at the beginning, and I will repeat myself all the way through, no doubt, because we're leveraging the AIR platform, it gives us a lot of additional functionality that you wouldn't ordinarily get from other shell solutions. So, for example, Tom was able to open the shell with just one click on the endpoints that are already categorized and are already sitting ready to use within AIR. As I'm sure he's going to show you in the second scenario, you have the ability to send your evidence off to cloud repositories and those kinds of things. So it's much more than a simple shell solution, and a lot more easy to use, I believe. So we will move on now to the second demonstration. We will come back to our setup.exe file and see how we close out that investigation later on in the webinar. But let's move on now to our second scenario, which will show some of the other capabilities of InterACT. So this time a CM has raised the alarm about an unrecognized backup task that nobody in the team has done by themselves, and an associated spike in network traffic. So let's dive in and see what we can find out.
Thank you, Steve. So in this scenario, we are going to open an InterACT shell to an Ubuntu server, a Linux server, and this comes to show that the cross-platform capabilities of InterACT. So we will see some commands, some of the same commands, some different, but basically all of the commands in InterACT, regardless of the endpoint OS, are the same. So I'll show that in a second. Just to highlight this again, so this is where I had the option to choose if I want to download files that I collect or save it to an evidence repository. So let's start this InterACT session. And as I said, we are now on a Linux machine, but if I send the help command, we have the exact same set of commands, and they work exactly the same. So we have a few variations here, like dir and ls. Those are aliases. I can use either. They both work the same. I can use both on either Windows or Linux. It doesn't matter. So those are all cross-platform. Okay, so now let's jump to the scenario. So first thing we want to do is see if we do really have that spike of network traffic. And we'll start that by using the exec command. And we want to run a TCP dump on that specific IP address that the CM alerted us about. So that's the IP address. Let's take 10 entries. And what you see here is I'm running this command by using the exec command. I'm actually running native commands in the Linux shell. So that means I can really do anything I want on that endpoint, and it's running with the root privileges. So indeed, we see that there are some there is some activity. It seems like the attackers may be doing ICMP exfiltration or something like that, because we are seeing pings to that IP address from our server, which is not something we expected to see here. So now let's have a look at the cron tab and see the backup task that we didn't expect. So again, I'm using exec to run cron tab and see the those tasks. And indeed, there is a backup.sh script that's running every day at 3 a.m. So now let's go to the temp folder, cd to temp, and see what this file is. I'll use ls in here, but again, ls or dir, they are completely interchangeable. I can use whatever I'm comfortable with. And we can see here the backup.sh file. You'll notice it's a hidden file, but it doesn't matter. The ls command or the dir command, they will show hidden files as well. So now let's see what's in this backup file. Cut backup.sh. All right. So it seems like this sh file is running a file that is in the ICE Unix folder here in temp. So we know that this ICE Unix is something that is commonly used by attackers. So let's go into that folder. ICE Unix. And again, let's run ls. And now I want to use the extended argument here. And that gives me more details about the files in this folder. And it seems that this file has all possible permissions, and it belongs to user group hacker. If the name of the file doesn't give it away, then I don't know what does. All right, so this is indeed suspicious. By the way, just to mention, I've shown that I can use ls with an argument, with an option. So I'll just mention that for each command, we can also use the help or h to get details about that command and what options we can use for that command, how do we use those commands, and so on. So we have all that information. All right, so now let's look at the user list, because we see this hacker group. So that's suspicious. So let's just print the user list, and indeed we see that there is a user named hacker, and that's the last user that was added to this system. And obviously we don't want that user there. Next, let's see the process that's running here. So let's use ps list. Again, one of the native commands in InterACT to see the running processes on this Linux machine. And indeed, we have that evil process running here. So last thing we want to do is hash evil. And we will, again, do the same process we did before. Basically, check this hash. We can zip the file and send it to malware analysis to understand a little bit more into what's going on. That's it for the second scenario on Linux. I'll hand it back over to Steve, and then we'll see some remediation steps back on our first scenario. So Steve, back to you.
Thanks, Tom. If only they would all call themselves hacker and evil, it would be much easier. So that was good. I mean, the takeaway for me there was how seamless the transition was from Windows to Linux, and exactly the same user experience. So I think that's a big plus. Let's move on now to the third scenario. And in that scenario, we're going to return to the first one, actually. So the results are in from the malware analysis. And setup.exe is indeed malicious. So we need to remediate it. And let's go and do that using InterACT within Air. Tom, quick transition, back to you.
Thanks, Steve. So I'm back to the InterACT shell for the first scenario, for the desktop demo 004, where we had the malicious setup file. Before we jump back into the shell, I just wanted to show the report. So you're already familiar with that structural report. It's our usual HTML report. For each session, actually, maybe you can open another, show it here. So for each InterACT session, we get a task, and I can see that it still says processing. You see for both endpoints, because the shell is still open. But although it's still open, I can already open the report, and I can view the report while it's still active. So that is very strong as a collaborative tool. So that means other users can view the report and see what I'm doing on that endpoint in real time. and you can see the commands that we've sent earlier, and I can see the responses to these commands as well. Now, this report is live. So if I'll send, what was the last command that we sent here was the get setup.zip. If I'll send another command here, let's send PS list. And I'll now refresh this report. Yeah. Sorry, my keyboard shortcuts don't want to work. Let's do this. Let's just open it again. Sorry about that. Let's just refresh this page. And you can see the PS list was added here. So now I have that in here, and that's actually very useful because if I click view full response, I can see it in here. I can search in this. Okay, I'm stealing my own thunder because we'll see that in a minute. So just anything that I will search in here, you see is highlighted in the text. All right, back to the back to the shell. All right, so the first thing we want to do here is run PS list to see that what's going on. Now, one of the other things that we've discovered in our malware analysis is that setup file actually is running a process called SCV host. So trying to hide in our system, and that it has a persistence mechanism. So that came back from the malware analysis, and now we want to look for that. So I run the PS list command. We have all the processes here. I can simply use the I'm in the wrong window. I can simply use the search option from the browser to search for SCV host, and of course we find that that process here, and we see that it's running from temp. So that on its own is suspicious enough. All right, so what we want to do now is run some tools to identify what's going on. So let's go to cd c blue team, just a folder to stage what we're going to do here. Why doesn't it want to work? I am missing the column. Okay, blue team, and now, dear, I already have those things here. I shouldn't for this demo. Sorry about that. Let me fix that real quickly. And okay, so sorry. Yeah, my blue team folder is empty. Now, I want to deploy some tools in order to use with my on my endpoint. So in my library, this is where I have my tools. I want to use Proc Dump on this system. So what I'm going to do is simply click import file. I don't have it in my library yet. So import file, and I'll just drag and drop the Proc Dump zip from my computer here, import that file, and now it's available here. I can copy the name from here and simply use put procdump.zip and it's deployed to the endpoint. So now let's use dir, and it's on this endpoint. I need to unzip it now. So I'll use the zip command, this time with the unzip handle, and that's proc dump .zip. Okay, that's done. And we have all the files here. Next thing I want to do is run the proc dump on the native shell. So I'll use exec. And from here on out, it's just common syntax. It's not something that's standard to us. So that is things you can Google. Proc dump .exe, and I need to accept the EULA, and I want the process I want to collect is obviously that SCV host service, so scvhost.exe, and let's put in scvhost.dmp. All right, that's it. Dir, I have my scvhost.dmp file, and let's collect that file, scvhost.dmp. And I got this proc dump file, and I can send it on to analysis. All right, let's move on. I don't need that process running anymore. I don't want it running. So there are two ways to kill this process. Let's look for it again. Here it is. I can either use the process name or the process ID. Again, if I'll just run here, kill, the kill command, help, then that's how I use this command. So either the PID or the name. We're going to do it with the name this time. It will be easier. So just kill dash name, or I can just do -n scv host.exe. Done. Let's do PS list again, and this is from my previous search, but here you can see it's not in this PS list. If you want to see it more specifically and make sure you're not confusing with the previous PS list, I can always jump to my report. Hopefully the F5 works now. It doesn't. And let's open it again. So I have the latest commands, and now I have two separate PS list commands here. So if I go to that PS list specifically and look for scv host, obviously it's not here. All right. Next thing we want to do is, well, another way to do it, I wrote it in my notes, is actually if I do just clear screen and then run PS list and then Control F. So now I know for sure it's not here. All right. Right. Next thing we want to do is check out and remediate the persistence mechanism of this file. And from the malware analysis, we found that there is a registry key for that in the run. So excuse me while I just, let's do it this way. Copy paste something here. So I want to just run exec reg query. on this on the obviously run key to see all the anything that's running on startup. And we have here a key called a value called run SCV, and we can see it's related to our file, our process, and we also have a hint here of what it's actually doing. So obviously we want to get rid of that. So let me copy another thing from here. Nah, never mind. All right, so exec reg delete, and again we're in the same key, and we just need the name of this entry, and that's now deleted, and we can run the query again, and it's not here anymore. All right, last but not least, let's go back to our CD2 C Windows temp, and let's delete that folder. So I'm using the D option for directory, and I want to delete that mega search folder. That's it. We got rid of that as well. That's it for this scenario. So we found that setup.sh file, setup.exe file, and we sent it to analysis, and based on what we got back, we were able to remediate this threat. Back to you, Steve.
Great stuff. Okay, so hopefully we've demonstrated today that InterACT is a powerful remote shell product with many additional unique features layered on top, thanks to the Air platform. That makes it a powerful solution. So obviously the demonstrations we made today are relatively straightforward and simple. I'm sure you guys could put it to much more complicated use. And what we'd like to do now is just sell you a little bit on what's coming. We believe that InterACT is a powerful solution right now, but we do have a lot more specifically in the InterACT roadmap. And the first of those items is bulk actions. So Tom or Erhan or even Emre, if you're there, tell us about bulk actions quickly.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the question. I've heard during the demo so many questions and messages.
Yeah,
so
I'm doing my best to answer them all, Tom. Don't worry, it's on me.
For the first time, we have lots of questions, so let's go through the roadmap relatively quickly so we can do as many of those as possible.
All right, okay.
Leave it to me, leave it to me.
The questions. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so quickly about the roadmap. So bulk actions, what we've seen today in the demo was all actions that we've done, all remote shell from one point, so from the Air console to one specific endpoint. And when I wanted to investigate or remediate two different endpoints, I needed two different shells in order to investigate them. What we're working on now, and will come in one of the next versions, is actually not the next version, the one right after that, is a sort of a bulk action feature or bulk action version of that. So basically, you can send the same InterACT commands that we've seen today. You can send them, instead of to one endpoint, you can send them to many endpoints at the same time. And we aggregate all the results that you get from all the different endpoints in a table, which you can then very easily filter and group together based on the responses that you got from all the different endpoints in order to select which endpoints you want to send the next command to. And this way you can really investigate a lot of endpoints at the same time and drill down to the ones that are actually relevant to your investigation based on the responses that you're getting from those endpoints.
Great. Sounds very powerful. Next one, OS query.
Emre, you want to take that, or Erhan? Erhan, you want to take that?
Yeah.
Yes, Tom. One of the most
Go ahead,
requested feature is OS query, as you know. OS query is the actually free and source tool and on enterprise forensic solution actually. And by using this OS query solution, we can do any kind of query to collect some forensic data actually, and coming soon. It will be perfect for InterACT actually.
Yeah, so basically OS query commands will be added as InterACT commands, just like we use the commands in the demo today. You'll be able to use OS query commands, and of course, along with the bulk actions that we've just mentioned.
Great. Next one. I really like this one actually. I think this ties it back to the wider platform. So air tasks via InterACT.
Absolutely. So everything we've seen today in InterACT makes InterACT a model within Air, but actually what we are looking to do, and we'll do in upcoming versions, is to tie it all back together. So actually, when you've started an investigation on an endpoint through InterACT, you don't need to navigate anywhere else. You'll be able to do all the tasks that you can with Air. So start an acquisition, run a triage, send that endpoint to a timeline. Isolate that endpoint. I lost the word. Sorry. Isolate that endpoint and so on. Everything directly from that shell. So that will be very powerful. Again, everything that we're adding to the shell and to the bulk query feature. So you'll be able to assign tasks to endpoints directly through the shell as well.
Great. Okay, looking a little further ahead now. So we'll do these real quick because we do have a lot of questions to answer. So I'm going to do them both at the same time. So Live Explorer and then sequences and playbooks.
All right, thanks. Okay, so Live Explorer, basically you've seen that on the right side of the shell we had the library and the system resources. So one of the things we will add in that area is, as the name suggests, a Live Explorer of the folders, directories of that endpoint, and you'll be able to navigate through the folders with no latency to see what is in the folders in a more visual way and not just through the shell itself. Sequences and playbooks, basically tying all those nice commands that we've seen, including the Air tasks that you'll be able to send through InterACT to playbooks that you can create a sequence of actions, a sequence of commands to send as a task, basically. So I can create a playbook of certain commands and we'll add logic to that as well, and you'll be able to automate a lot of what you can do manually today with InterACT and with Air in general. So that would be a very powerful addition when that comes.
And I'll be able to do that concurrently to thousands of endpoints at the same time, right, Tom?
Absolutely, because it will be just like assigning any task today. So just the way that I can assign a acquisition task or a triage task to 1,000 endpoints, I can assign a sequence or a playbook to 1,000 endpoints.
Awesome. Okay, so the future for InterACT looks bright. Let's get into these questions, but before we do that, let's just give you the offer. So if you like what you've seen and if you want to have a play by yourself, it's really easy to do. So we have a 14-day trial system. It takes a couple of minutes to set the exact same instance that Tom was demonstrating today up for yourself. Just visit Binalyze.com. In the header, you'll see a Try Now button. Press the Try Now button, fill in your email address, and we will create a Docker instance of Air for you, which you can use. It's fully featured. There's no limitations except the number of endpoints you can add. And you can use that for free of charge for 14 days. So please go ahead and visit the website and start your 14-day trial. We'd love to have you do that. Right, let's get into the questions. So let's start from the top. Many of these have been answered, but I'm going to read them out anyway so that everyone else on the call can also hear them. Might be interesting for them. So can InterACT be helpful for analyzing live memory environment for file-less malware attack scenarios? Erhan, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. Steve, thank you. Actually, we can use pslist command to detect some malicious activity on like file-less malware because we are showing process name. In addition, you can see all process command line arguments, command line details and arguments, so you can detect some suspicious activity. As you know, living off the land binaries are common methods nowadays. It will be useful. In addition, actually, before the InterACT, we have a triage option on the memory, so users can use this triage option at the same time. In addition, we used, as you remember, on the third scenario, we used Proc Dump, and you can dump some process, and so that you will be able to analyze suspicious activity on memory. Yeah, I think it's clear.
Okay, good. Next one. And by the way, thank you, AJ, for all your questions. I really appreciate it. There's lots of them here. The next one is, can we execute ACT shell commands through SAW? Erhan, I'll give that one to you again.
Yeah, actually, currently it is not working with SOAR. Actually, Air has some webhook support, as you know, but webhook is not working with InterACT shell currently, but we will add this capability in coming soon. So you will be able to remove the trigger sequences or some different commands via your SOAR or SIEM solution. And InterACT will be a gun for your SOC environment.
Great. Awesome. Next one, again for Erhan probably. Is there any session count limit?
Actually, no, there is no session count limit. You can create multiple sessions at the same time, and on the same endpoint or different endpoint. There is no limitation. You can use comfortably.
Good. Sounds good. Can we access the remote? We can access the remote endpoint using RDP. Why should we use the InterACT?
Okay. Actually, that's right. They can access the endpoint by using RDP or PS Exec or similar solutions, but it's not a suggested method on incident response because these remote connection methods are using Windows or Active Directory accounts, and it can be dangerous. In the worst case scenario, attackers can steal your credentials. And in addition, as you know, APT groups are following the security team activity, and you don't want to get caught by them. Actually, we can say this is the safest remote shell experience on the investigation.
I want to add something else, Steve.
Go ahead.
That's a question I heard a lot in the past. If you can access the endpoint, then you may run some commands, do some investigation to some extent. But the first version of InterACT is just a preview, so you can think of it that way. This is just the baseline for implementing a lot of innovative features. And to answer that question, if you can access it in codes, you can do some stuff, but you can access one machine at a time. You cannot do it on thousands of endpoints. InterACT is the basis for that. So once we add the upcoming features that Tom previously mentioned, then you'll be able to do it on a scale And this way, you'll be able to investigate all your network as if it's a single machine. So your whole network will be the target of an investigation, and you'll be able to perform it using a single shell. So that's just the beginning.
Good. Okay, another deep question now, which Enumerate, I'll let you answer because you answered it on the chat. Does the execution of commands through InterACT on the client system leave some sort of registry entry trace or digital evidence?
Perfect. From the ground up, we design InterACT to be a unibody. So we pay great attention not to use any external binaries. As an example, you can use the embedded find command on Linux. It comes embedded into the Linux, but we don't use it. It's fully implemented using the source, the source code. So we pay great attention not to use, unless we need to, for some cases. An exec command is an exception to that. So all the commands you run via InterACT is embedded into the binary itself, into the agent binary itself. So that's why it doesn't run any external binaries. And that leaves the minimum amount of evidence on the system. If we didn't do that, if we use some external binaries, then running those files creates a lot of stuff on the system. But in our case, it's limited.
Good. Okay. And the last one, because I think we're almost out of time. So what if an attacker gains access to InterACT? Do you have any precautions for such situations? So I'm really teeing you guys up to talk about the wider system security.
Yeah, Steve. Actually, of course, we have too many precautions for that, and one of them, and Tom mentioned about these details: two-factor authentication. So if your password stolen by the attackers, and it is not easy to access. It is not possible to access Binalyze Air. In addition, we are using SSL encryption. These are mandatory settings. In addition, the auditing mechanism is really powerful, and you can send each InterACT shell session or each command details to your SIEM solution. And if you want to create an alert for suspicious usage, you can do it easily. And if there is a problem, the global admin user can disable InterACT feature with one click.
I will add to that a little bit more about the global security of the platform. So you can also limit who has access to the Binalyze Air platform, not only by user access, but also by IP restrictions and by port restrictions. So all of that is already implemented as part of the settings of the systems.
Great, thanks, guys. Okay, time is up. Unfortunately, I really enjoyed this one. It was a great session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Looking at the number of attendees, it's stayed steady all the way to the end. So we must have done something right, I believe. There will be a recording of this available to you all. I think it's sent automatically by the Livestorm platform. Please go to the website. Open up your free trial. If you have any questions, support@binalyze.com. We'd be happy to help you. And yeah, we look forward to working with you. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.